So realize that there's all these little things, just dressing appropriately for the job. Well, etiquette is all about kindness, consideration, respect, and integrity. It's not about showing off. It's not about being elitist. It's not about making anyone feel less than.
Today, I have the true and special honor of getting to interview my new friend through our mutual friend, Ariane, shout out, Alison Cheperdak, the founder of Elevate Etiquette, and an impressive lady who's done a lot of things that I'm very, very excited for you to get to hear from, especially in it pertains to how you've built a career out of your passion. If you would resonate with that, you can let me know. And also why Christians should care about etiquette and how it pertains to their career development and even job searching. So those are a few things that I suspect we'll get into in our conversation. But overall, just welcome, Allison. I'm so excited to get to have this with you.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here. And as I said earlier, I am a longtime fan, longtime listener, and I've been so encouraged by so many of your episodes and all that you do. So really grateful to be
Wow.
here.
Thank you. I think that listeners maybe will have a similar reaction to what I did as I'm about to list off the rap sheet of things that you have done in your career. And I'm going to open it up to ask you to share how did all this happen? But you have gone from competitive ice dancing
Mhm.
as a youth to working as a television news anchor and then an attorney. And then I should say now, after being an attorney, you started Elevate Etiquette and going into the realm of entrepreneurship and have even landed a book deal. And if listeners join me in following along with your Instagram account, they'll also see that you have amazing speaking engagements and media spots and all of these other things. So, Allison, I don't know if this is a nice way to phrase it, but how the heck? How did this happen?
Oh, wow. Well, I think like so many things, God has a plan and you don't necessarily realize it. So if I look back, it's like, oh, all of these little things I did were helpful in getting to where I am now. But I guess in the beginning, figure skating, I grew up in New England and my mom was a skater and my grandfather was a hockey coach and a lot of my uncles played hockey and I had a skating rink in my backyard. So that was like a natural thing. I was destined to learn how to skate.
Wow.
And so I competed for a while. My little brother's actually still skating. He's in Disney on Ice, which is fun to, still cheer him on. But skating was a big part of my life. And I did it through some of college and then eventually felt like it was time to kind of get serious about internships and things. And my first internship was as an investigative journalist researching the crash of a plane during an Olympic year that had a whole bunch of figure skaters on it. And that was where I kind of caught the bug for investigative journalism. And while I was in college, I interned at the NBC station in Philly, the Fox station in Philly, the ABC station in Boston. And I also got some experience on air myself in a smaller local station. And then, so I kind of caught the bug of, I don't know if performance or storytelling is the right way to put it, but you're storytelling as a performer, as a skater. And I think you can probably relate as a former dancer.
Mhm.
And so you're storytelling with your body. And then I started to learn how to storytell with my words, which is very different. And there was a learning curve there.
Yes.
And I was working as a general assignment news reporter for an NBC station in upstate New York. And as general assignment, I was doing a little bit of everything. And I found myself most attracted to legal stories and political stories. And so that's what inspired me to go to law school because I really wanted to be a specialist and not a generalist.
Mm.
And I applied to law schools up and down the East Coast. My husband and I were already married. We got married about a couple months after I graduated from college. And he's also a figure skater. So that was how we met.
Amazing.
Yes. So I got into law school at George Washington here in DC, and my husband Jason got a job here as well. So we moved to DC, and I was still thinking that I was going to be a legal correspondent. And then I got to DC, and I realized that there are so many things you can do with a law degree that I wasn't really aware of before. And so then I was a law clerk on 3 committees in the Senate, one in the House. I clerked for the chair of the FCC. I graduated from law school. My first job out of school was at a big law firm in the commercial litigation group. Then I
Wow.
worked for the US Treasury, where I met our dear friend Ariane, who we both adore. And from there, I worked in the West Wing of the White House up until the end of the administration. Then I clerked for a judge. I worked for a nonprofit, the March for Life. And then it was while I was at the March for Life that I started posting on social media and didn't really know what would come of it. But I got a lot of positive feedback and just kind of ran with the momentum. And that was a very verbose way of saying I've done many things and I'm, happy to be where I am now, albeit non-traditionally.
In my opinion, that was the most concise way that you could share that much life that you fit into relatively few years. In my opinion, it sounds like if I were reading that resume, that you should be at least 60. So I just am amazed. Um,
Well, it is funny. Like, I think different parts of the country. I remember once going to a talk where there was, an attorney general who had been working in DC, and then there was another attorney that was from New York, and they were saying how in DC, if you've been at the same job for 7 years, it's a red flag because you haven't been scooped up for another opportunity. But in a place like New York, it would. And perhaps things have changed, but the perception was that like you were a flight risk and like you couldn't stand to hold a job. So I think it's all kind of relative, but
that's good to remember because my little Texan self is just stunned.
oh,
So, with Elevate Etiquette, how did you even decide that you wanted to start posting online? Because it sounds very casual, like, oh, I started posting, but that could be a really big deal for people.
yes. So I needed a creative outlet. And I will say, and I usually don't speak too much about my time in government service, but it wasn't an easy transition going from working in the West Wing of the White House to not. It's like it's just kind of an intensity and a pace. And I don't believe that your work should be your identity, but there were a lot more hours in the day after I had a job like that. And I think I was looking for like an avenue of creative expression. And I also think I am wired to be an entrepreneur and to have creative agency. And so there was a lot of excitement around that. And I think I've been working, I'm still working with the same life coach. She's also Christian. And we used to talk about what would you do even if no one was paying you for it? Or also, what do people ask you about all the time? And for me, it was these kinds of things like, can you read this thank you note? Or like, how soon is too soon to follow up after an interview? Or like, what do I wear? Or what do I talk about? Or like all of these little things. And I also realized that Washington is such a relationship oriented town. And I'm not here to say that, that etiquette only matters in Washington, but by and large, many people are not from here and they get jobs or they advance or they don't get jobs or they don't advance based largely in part on their social skills. And your
Wow.
social skills kind of get you in the door and then you have to perform. And I would see people that would, for lack of better words, kind of shoot themselves in the foot by not knowing how to behave, and maybe like not having the right um, like wanting to take a selfie with a senator when it's like, you're the staff person and you want to be a little more serious in these moments if you want to be taken seriously as a colleague and not, like an intern if you're trying to make that transition or like little things like that. Or I realize there are so many little things that really aren't that little in the aggregate that people don't realize could be really helpful for them. And so I started sharing. And as my friend Ariane was someone who encouraged me, and that etiquette was something that I was always interested in. I got my first etiquette book when my husband and we were 22, engaged to be married, and I had so many questions. I'm the only oldest grandchild on one side of the family, hadn't really been to many weddings myself, and I'm rules oriented. I did become an attorney, so I was looking for like a book to tell me what to do so I could do maybe some controversial things that weren't my opinion. And so I got my first book thinking I would just flip to the pages that would let me know, like, does everybody get a plus one? Or like, how do I address this envelope and all these kinds of things? And I found myself reading it cover to cover and reading so many books on emotional, social intelligence and EQ since then. And I didn't really talk about it that much because I never wanted people to feel badly or awkward. Like if we would go to dinner and my husband would tell people that I knew a lot about dining etiquette, I would be like, okay, great. Now no one wants to eat anything. So that was an insecurity for me. But then I realized that there are people who are like me that want to learn more about this. And I can share it in these kind of like quick, snackable little ways that like I'm sort of like a secret weapon in
Mhm.
their pocket, So,
Certainly mine.
well, thank you. I'm happy to hear it because it's really, really important to me that nothing ever comes across as like I'm talking down to
Mhm.
anyone or like I want someone to feel badly about what they don't know or like they've learned something differently from what I suggest. So that's really important to me.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a thing or two in common with nutritionists
Yeah.
that say, why did all of my friends start acting weird when I started going to nutrition school? I don't care if you eat fried chicken. That's
Yes.
okay. I'm just here to do the best I can.
Exactly.
So, with your, if I'm correct in estimating this, that you started posting, was it about 2.5 years ago, or was it?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So my first post was it was in September, Labor Day weekend, and so it's been 2.5 years now. And in the beginning, I was just like kind of posting into the ether, and there weren't that many people there, but I grew relatively quickly. Surpassed 100,000 followers on Instagram within 8 months or so,
Wow.
um, and and it's been a lot of fun. It's definitely an interesting experiment to conduct on yourself, being an entrepreneur and being a content creator, but
Yeah.
it's been fun.
I, if it's all right to indulge some curiosity that I think listeners might share, how, and then we'll get into actual etiquette for job searching and professional development. But in terms of the business building, how did you grow so quickly and then also turn posting on Instagram into your career?
Sure, that's a great question. So, in terms of growing quickly, I think the biggest advice I would have is just rapid deployment of the highest quality content that you can put out there and analyze it and improve. Just keep iterating as much as you can. And I think that if you don't look back at your early days and cringe a little bit, then you waited too long to get started. You
Well
should
said.
yeah, you should be able to see that growth. It's like exciting to be like, oh wow, I was like really awkward, or I was really stiff, or I didn't really come across very personal there. And I think treat it like an experiment and treat like social media is a moving target. So I I will never complain about an algorithm. Like I will observe an algorithm and I will try to adapt, but like this is the business we've chosen, as they say in The Godfather. So like you just have to adapt with it. And just because something works for you forever does not mean you're entitled to it working for you forever.
Mhm.
So, and that's not always easy. Because I would have some things that were like real bangers, and if I did them today, they wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So you just have to be adaptive there. And in terms of the speed of things, I would say be gentle with yourself. Like control your output. So that's what you can do. So how many posts are you doing a day or how many posts are you doing a week? Not how many followers are you gaining, because
Mhm.
there's only so much that you can do to control that. And when you're hyper focused on the things that are beyond your control, I think it's a recipe for disappointment.
Again, perfectly said. And when you, one core piece of advice I heard in that is, I loved what you said about rapid deployment of as high quality content as possible. And I thought, not rocket science, but most people, and this is what I've experienced in business, even with myself, I've just realized and tried to weed out in myself this unwillingness to do what I know I need to do.
Hmm.
And rather focus on, I kind of get encouraged by the fact that the vast majority of people will not do what they know they need to
Hmm.
do.
Yes.
And so, well, maybe if I just actually put in the work and do these things, it over time with patience, focusing on what you can control in your output, it could work out.
Yes, and something I don't know if this will resonate with anyone, but I have had different seasons of work. And like when I was a television news reporter and anchor, I always had work product at the end of the day. So like good, bad, or ugly, I was on live television and then the day was over unless it was like a very big story with continuing coverage. Usually we would start with a clean slate the next day. And I really liked, I didn't realize it until it was over, but I really liked having something to show for my work every day.
Yeah.
And then I went to law school and you're like you feel like you're one in a million and you've got one big exam that determines your grade in each class, and it was very different for me. And now I post a lot, so again I have this like I have this work product to show for what I'm doing, and I do like that, but it's probably like a personality thing.
Well, you found what works and then you did it. That's another obvious thing that many people do not do.
Yeah.
I, not to be rude about it, but that's just something I've observed. So I would love to hear, why do you think, especially from a Christian perspective, we
Mhm.
should care about etiquette?
Well, etiquette is all about kindness, consideration, respect, and integrity. That's what it's about at its core. It's not about showing off. It's not about being elitist. It's not about making anyone feel less than. It's about facilitating really meaningful, authentic relationships. And so that's the why. And that is so inherently Christian. I I teach for everyone. I share for everyone. You don't need to be Christian in order for these messages to resonate, but they certainly do for me in a really Christian way.
Until I came across you and your work, I genuinely did not understand that.
Mhm.
I was on the other side of the equation of what you said. I genuinely thought etiquette was something that you do to make sure that you always look impressive and never embarrass yourself, and everyone knows that you're better than them. And I once you drilled home for me that etiquette is the practice of Christian values, especially in terms of, I think of loving your neighbor.
Exactly.
Sending a thank you note isn't to sound or to show that you're so on top of your life.
Right.
It's to genuinely thank them and
Yes.
take a moment of appreciation and love. And
Mhm.
so, consideration, kindness, integrity, many of the other things you shared just move me so much and make me sit up straighter
Mm.
and enjoy um, learning from you more and more consistently. With job seeking, and especially this audience of believers who want to create a career that they feel called to,
Yes.
what are some, can I say, like faux pas in job seeking that you already mentioned some in terms of example of, you saw in the White House, people were stunting their professional perception and growth based on these little faux pas. What are some, maybe in the application interview process, anything else that you see commonly happening that could be
Sure.
corrected?
Yes, that's a great question. So, as much as we may not like to think that we judge a book by its cover, we have this survivalist tendency to do just that. We judge people by what they look like and then what they sound like and then what they say. And what you look like, it extends to everything someone can see about you. So it's not just your outfit, it's also like your notebook that you bring into a meeting. Is it in good condition? If you're someone who has business cards, can you quickly access it? Is your office or is your area, is it tidy and in good condition? People start to paint a picture when they see how organized your desk is, or if you show up on time, or if you have a embarrassing picture on the lock screen of your phone, or if you have pictures in your workspace that are not fitting for a Zoom meeting, that kind of thing. So realize that there's all these little things, just dressing appropriately for the job, and what's appropriate for one job is not necessarily going to be appropriate for another, but dress appropriately for the job, be on time, and just have kind of everything that someone can see should be something that you can be proud of. Another thing that I would recommend is people often ask what they should wear for an interview, and they might say, like, well, it's a really casual company, so I guess I should dress casual too. What I recommend is whatever the Super Bowl would be for your industry or your office, whether it's like a big meeting or a client day or giving a presentation, that's the way that you should dress for the interview. So that doesn't necessarily mean a full suit for every single position, but it would mean a full suit for some positions. So just think of it that way.
I like that. Don't mind me as I quote you for the rest of my
Oh,
time.
please.
That I especially thought the first point you shared was one we could camp out on all day. All day.
Yes.
I and I'm of course I think that all of these topics kind of hold up a mirror of memories of like, oh man, I have so much room to improve. But I've noticed as, and I'm sure you have as well, been in hiring positions of hiring, whether it's for Elevate Etiquette or for other things, leadership positions you've held. I have actually been quite surprised when I was a job seeker or an applicant. I thought everyone's so on their game. This is going to be really hard for me to get. But then when I was on the other side, I thought, oh my goodness, I think most people actually aren't spell checking their emails
Yes.
or are showing up late or look like they have not done their hair or put on makeup for a
Yes.
professional scenario. And sorry, this is not very professional, but we can dunk on them all day if you just do those things.
Right. Right. You're absolutely right. And I think I was just having this conversation with a girlfriend over the weekend, and she was saying how she knows people are busy and she doesn't want to bother them, and she doesn't know if it's a good time for hiring. And from the hiring person's perspective, it is so exciting when you have a phenomenal candidate that you're excited to hire. So know that if you're someone that's on the side of looking for a new role. Another thing I would say is communication is a big one. And sometimes I think we want to come across as collegial, but you want to be err on the side of being more formal and more deferential, especially in those initial communications.
Absolutely. This is what I am going to out myself here. A client recently who we just wrapped up with and he had a great experience. He recently said, "You know, as I was listening to you and Audrey and enjoying your podcast, I was a little concerned about the casual joking because I thought, are
Interesting.
they going to be serious?" But I was really glad that once I was a part of your program, I saw that you were very professional, serious, and we got the job done. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just having fun with my work bestie. And, podcast banter I enjoy listening to podcasts like that. But I realized, oh my Lord, there's these older men that we work with that are worried that we're
Yeah.
going to just be a girls' club or too joking. So, just to out myself for the audience, I recently uh, gave received that feedback and am internalizing it.
Oh, that's interesting. I have never thought that, and I also appreciate banter on podcasts. I think it makes it more dynamic. But it makes me think of how you want to be professional on all of your personas, and etiquette isn't something that you like turn off for the weekend like an out of office email reply. It just looks a little different in different scenarios. And I think of like the way that you present yourself on LinkedIn may be different than how you present yourself on Instagram, which may be different than how you present yourself on a dating app, which may be different than how you present yourself on Slack with your colleagues. But it's all digital communication, and it all should be thoughtful, and it all should be in keeping with whatever your personal brand is.
That, yes, absolutely. A new level to aspire to. Again, you make me sit up straighter every single day. So, I'm wondering if you've had encounters with people who say, Allison, I don't know where to start. I'm really struggling with self
Mhm.
confidence or even self respect. I
Yes.
know I need to show up on time. I know I need to polish myself,
Yes.
but I just feel like a mess and I don't know what it's going to take. to finally start acting the way I want to be
Mhm.
acting. Where can they start?
I think often when people come to me with those kinds of questions, they have a really hard time talking about themselves. They have a hard time introducing themselves and explaining their background or what they currently do, or just having a conversation. Like I had a conversation with a woman recently, and we were just role playing, and I was pretending that we were seated next to each other on a plane, and she started to cry, and she was just having a really hard time. And I was asking her what was going through her mind as I was talking, and she said that it was just like panic and her mind was going blank. And so you asked a very general question, and this may not get exactly at it, but oftentimes when people are struggling in conversation and they have a lot of social anxiety, they're focused too much on what they're going to say next and not enough on what the other person is saying. So if you focus more on listening, then over time, you'll relax into having more curiosity and the questions will flow more naturally. So that's a big one. But I think having a safe space, it can be with me, it can be with you, it can be with, a significant other, a close friend, but having someone that you can role play with to have conversations and try things on for size, having like an elevator pitch, if you will. And you don't need to be a professional, you don't need to be jockeying for a new position in order for this to be helpful, because we're meeting people all the time
Yes.
um, that want to know what we're all about, and it's an opportunity for connection. So I would say practice being able to describe yourself a little bit, what you enjoy, those kinds of things, and then focus on curiosity and active listening in conversations.
Mm.
And then another thing, especially in the professional development world, people will say, well, I'm really introverted or I'm really shy, and so networking doesn't work for me. Or they hate the idea of networking, it feels sleazy or something like that. And what I say to that is that what works for one person isn't going to work for another, and that's absolutely okay. Some people love to go for drinks after work. Some people, that sounds like a nightmare, and they just want to get home and they would rather do like a one on one coffee or a Zoom session, or maybe email works. So I think start to become more self aware on what resonates with you and what types of connections are most helpful for you. And that's not to say that we don't sometimes need to do things in our professional careers that we don't want to,
Mhm.
but the more you can be aware of what's in your comfort zone from a networking perspective and realizing that networking can be like really wonderful in
Yeah.
establishing connections and glorifying the kingdom and multiplying our talent. So if you think of it in that more of a holistic way rather than like a transactional selfish way,
Mhm.
I think it can open people's mind to how it's not as terrible as they might be initially
Yes.
thinking.
Yes. Oh, so much of your tips that you just shared were it sounded to me along the theme of um, think about, just listen to the other person,
Hmm.
or uh, kind of get outside of yourself. Or what if you could there could be a good for the kingdom or for others by going out and networking, whatever it is. And similarly for me with a prior struggle of timeliness, even still, one thing that got me out of it was, I'll share first one thing that didn't work, was thinking, oh, that I'll be so embarrassed if I was late. Actually, I wasn't, because I had kind of grown up in a professional environment where everyone was 5 minutes behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought that was normal. So I don't think I had it hard coded in me, like the embarrassment of being late. So that wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
But once I started visualizing someone else sitting on Zoom or
Wow.
what they might be thinking,
Yes.
or if they were watching the clock, or if they had a little anxiety spike of if this is still happening, that got me in line so fast. So just thinking of others in everything is, I think, the core lesson of etiquette, that one of them that I take from your body of work. And with I am trying to decide if I should indulge a bunny trail, but instead maybe I will. Maybe I will. Here we go. I think one thing that I wonder your opinion on is curating who you follow to
Mm,
raise your standard, because I found it's really easy to surround myself, for my own selfish comfort, with people who preach hot mess express.
mm,
Really easy to get into circles where it's a lot of complaining rather than taking agency like you did,
mhm,
uh, to ignite so many stages of growth in your career. You have a
mhm.
lot of agency. Like you say, I am not going to complain about the algorithm. I'm
Right.
not going to, maybe that could extend to complain just about being at a company I don't like. Sounds like
Mhm.
you moved on. And so, anyway, I think I've just been careful to curate who I'm looking up to. What do
Yeah,
you think about that?
I think that's wonderful. I do the same. And when I created my business, and I created a separate Instagram account. So I started from zero, and I started to be way more intentional with that account because I saw it as my work time. And so I saw it as like, so if there's anyone that I follow that doesn't make me feel good, and this isn't like a in like a way that is not helpful, not constructive. I see that as like being in a brick and mortar building, you're in your office and someone comes in and
Mhm.
interrupts you and like teases you or says something mean. That's the
That's
way
awesome.
that I see it. And so I have a choice to continue to follow that and to allow it to continue to bother me, or I can unfollow or I can mute if that's the diplomatic thing to do. And I take it really, really seriously. And that started like when I was before I became a news reporter, I used to watch Law and Order,
Of
and
course.
I really enjoyed it. And then I became a journalist and I got to see a lot of hard things in real life that weren't part of a movie and weren't part of a TV show. And ever since then, I believe in learning history and current events and what's actually happening in the world, but I have a really hard time watching anything that's really negative, or like I want to watch or read affirming stories and
Mhm.
things that are educational. I think it's really important to guard our hearts and minds, and that extends on social media. And I also think that if you're looking to grow your business, at least for myself, I find it a lot more helpful to look at people that are more advanced or more further along than I am rather than looking back.
Mhm.
And that's a hard line to walk because you don't want to abandon people that are, your friends, and you want to help other people. And I think mentorship is really important, but the more you can like stay focused on the goal of moving forward. Like I heard the analogy recently of a hockey player and was like, we have this net and you have a goalie and you're looking at the spots where the puck can go in the net. You're not looking at the goalie that's blocking it. So
Yeah.
you really want to focus your eye. And there's so many other analogies that are an extension of that, but you want to focus your eye on where you want to be going, not in any
Yeah.
other kind of direction.
Oh, yes. I I hear the applause in the back of my mind. The crowd roars. Yes, I love this. Allison, I before I ask just where listeners can follow along with you, is I if it's okay, this is a bit
Yes.
impromptu. I would just love to hear more about your dreams of where do you want all this to go? At least in this chapter of life. I'm sure you'll even surprise yourself with all that you could accomplish later on. But what are the dreams right now?
So the dreams right now are to finish my book, which I'm excited about. It will be published in 2026 with a Christian imprint of HarperCollins, and it's all about etiquette. It's about everyday etiquette for life, work, and love. And I'm really excited to bring that to my audience and to kind of build up to that moment. I really want to help people and I want to make an impact, and I want to continue to be a digital destination for all things etiquette. And in terms of what I'm focused on in the immediate future, I'd like to have an online course or online courses and continue to do more speaking engagements and coaching and be the go-to for all things etiquette.
Well, you're the go-to in my house.
Oh, thank you.
So, what is your Instagram handle and other things that listeners can follow along with?
I am at Elevate Etiquette, and I am on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Threads. So you can find me all those places. And then I've got a website that's elevateetiquette.com. And then I have an email newsletter that goes out every weekend.
Wow. Allison, thank you for your faithfulness to just do what you believe in and to create at the level of excellence that you do. It inspires me all the time. I hope I haven't overdone it with all my compliments, but I could say more. So, thank you so much for this conversation and sharing all the tips that you have and inspiration with our listeners.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And really, thank you for having me. And if anyone, I always say, if anyone has any kind of like personal questions that they don't feel comfortable commenting or sharing with the group, they can always DM me or send me an email. I'm happy to help.
That's so kind. All right. Well, cheers to this conversation. Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.